Welcome to the Daily Review. This is Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading. Today is August 4th, 2025, and today is Monday morning. So welcome back, everybody. Looking at the highlights of the day, U.S. markets sell off. But first, no major economic events scheduled for today. We do have corporate earnings as the week progresses. Now looking at the market, starting out with the Forex symbols, the Japanese yen strengthens versus the US dollar. Yes, most of the major pairs strengthen versus the US dollar, but the Japanese yen is the biggest winner. Now looking at the indices, the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq both sell off. Looking at commodities, gold gets a nice surge to the upside, and we look at the stocks, they sold off across the board. Lastly, looking at cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, slight bounce, but we're going to take a look at that because it may be a major play in place. So let's take a look at it and see what we can expect from today's trading. So we're going to start with the Japanese yen. You can see a massive strengthening of the Japanese yen versus the dollar, going from 150 down to 147. Now it's bouncing at this area to 148-ish level, so a decent bounce so far. But I want to highlight this because the Japanese yen was the first one to go versus the dollar, then some of the other major pairs, including the British pound. As you can see, yes, it is getting a bounce, but not as extreme as the Japanese yen is getting. Okay, so some more activity in the Japanese yen. Hard to have picked this up. Really hard to have picked this up. Anywhere from the top down, it's hard to have picked this up. But in these type of scenarios, there's usually a 50% bounce. So I anticipate that the bounce would be to 149-ish level. And that's still a ways to go. So if you want to play it on the upside, that's an option there. Now, taking a look at the euro, I think it's important to just digest with the euro just a second, and just for us to understand where the greater market is holding. Okay, so looking at the euro, that got the bounce, where the British pound would not have gotten the bounce because the British pound has been very weak versus the dollar. Okay, now you could see that quite nicely if you look at a 4-hour chart, but it's the first one to go. Look at that 50% bounce. Okay, it did sell off, but it's closer to 50% bounce than the Japanese yen. So out of all of them, the Japanese yen is really the strongest versus the dollar. So keep that in mind. So it goes from strongest to weakest, Japanese yen, the euro, and then the British pound. Now, looking at gold. Gold had a really nice move as it got a nice bounce, making a double bottom here. It's still trading in a range, okay? And I said this last week. It's a decent place to pick it up here at the bottom of the range, and sure enough, we bounced off of it. Now, looking at crude oil, not doing much here. We did get a small bounce, okay, but we did give up our gains from $71.50 down to $68 a barrel. That was a pretty decent move for 1 week of trading. Now, looking at the U.S. markets, yes, they sold off quite aggressively. Yes, it's getting a little bit of a bounce here, okay, but historically speaking, from August into September, we have a sell-off month, so we might want to look at that as that is unfolding. And looking at the Nasdaq, yes, this is also took a big dive. Now, the sell-off was across the board. There was anything that was spared. So if we break it down, JP Morgan had a big sell-off. Yes, it recovered some of its losses, but nevertheless, a very big sell-off there. Microsoft continued to sell off. Okay, so maybe it's going to close in this gap. And remember, we gapped up from 515 up to 554. That was a huge, huge move. So let's see if this does play a recovery today. And Meta also had that big move to the upside from $697 up to $770 at that open, and then retracing here further. Okay, so the question is whether or not we're going to get this fill in the gap, and that's what I'd be looking for here as well. Now, looking at Amazon, big gap down as well. Okay, and I would like for it to bounce here. Okay, where its recovery was much different, or rather, I should say, the corporate earning results was much different than Meta and Microsoft. Meta and Microsoft actually gapped up. Amazon gapped down. So in a weaker market, I don't want to say bet, but I would be much more inclined to think that Amazon would be selling off further, okay, if the market continues to sell off. Now, lastly, let's take a look at this because it's really important to note. Bitcoin, look at that. Those hairs that I'm highlighting at the bottom of the screen, or the bottom right of the screen, that's called volume. Now, the volume corresponds to the activity that's happening exactly opposite us. Okay, so up here, okay, where we see this huge increase in volume, that's corresponding to this sell-off and then bounce. That usually anticipates a very big move right before we have it. So if we look at here, this was the last time we had this major volume on the upside, and then we went even higher. Okay, so now we're having this on a sell-off. So the question is, are there major people selling this off? Time will tell. Okay, if we do cross over the 8-day moving average, that would give one indication. Okay, if I see that cryptocurrencies are getting softer, that would be a second indication. So I got to fish out to see if this is really going to be a sell-off in the next couple of weeks, which it may still be. So keep this on the radar as well. This is Fed Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.
My advice, this is the best time to trade.